Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into what I like to call an ancient, high-stakes intellectual showdown. It's from a classic early Buddhist text known as the Āmagandha Sutta. And wow, is it a fiery debate. It tackles a massive question. Where does our morality actually come from? Is it about what we eat or what we do? It's the ultimate battle of optics versus substance. And honestly, it's a debate we're still having today. Let's get into it. So, to really grasp what's going down in this text, we first need to look at this core term, Āmagandha. In Pali, it literally means putrefaction or foul smell. Sounds gross, right? But for ancient ascetics, this was a heavily loaded buzzword. They used it to describe physical impurity, and get this, it was strictly, absolutely associated with eating meat. You know how humanity has this long-standing obsession with physical diets as a measure of purity? It's kind of like the ancient version of a trendy juice cleanse. Back then, completely avoiding Āmagandha was the ultimate flex for a holy person.
Now, the text sets the stage with some serious narrative tension. Picture this: a Brahmin, which is a traditional religious figure, confronts an enlightened sage named Kassapa, and he levels a pretty intense accusation at him. He basically says, "Look at you, enjoying a dish of fine rice, well prepared with the flesh of fowl." He's totally calling him out. He's saying, hey, I thought you were this pure, holy man, but here you are eating meat. And then he drops this direct challenge. I'm asking you this, Kassapa, what do you take to be putrefaction? He is literally accusing an enlightened sage of consuming impurity. Bold move.
To really understand the Brahmin's outrage here, we have to look at what he considered to be the quote-unquote pure diet. We're talking millet, wild grains, broomcorn, greens, tubers, and squashes. That's the menu. From the Brahmin's perspective in the text, eating strictly foraged foods, obtained legally without lying or stealing, and absolutely avoiding meat, was the ultimate, undeniable sign of moral goodness. It's all about optics. If your plate looked like this, you were pure. If it didn't, you were corrupt. Plain and simple.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the Great Reframe, redefining purity.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that Kassapa doesn't just awkwardly defend his meal. No, he completely dismantles the Brahmin's entire worldview. Look at the comparison here. On one side, we've got the Brahmin's version of impurity, which is just eating fowl and fine rice. But on the other side, Kassapa drops his thesis. He argues that real impurity is stealing, lying, cheating, and cruelty. It's a massive paradigm shift. He's saying, look, you don't rot from the outside in based on what you digest, you rot from the inside out based on how you treat people. And Kassapa seals this argument with a brilliant rhythmic refrain that the source text just repeats over and over. This is putrefaction, not eating meat. It's basically an intellectual hammer. With every list of terrible human behaviors that Kassapa lays out, he circles right back to this exact phrase. He is completely tearing down the illusion that external, dietary optics have literally anything to do with actual goodness.
Moving on to Section 2. The Catalog of Vices, what actually corrupts us. So what exactly does Kassapa say causes this internal rotting? Well, he divides human corruption into two distinct categories. First up, on the left, he points to severe harm against others. We're talking violent acts, killing, mutilation, stealing, abduction, the heavy stuff. But then on the right, he targets this invisible poison in the mind. Internal flaws, things like greed for tastes, anger, obstinacy, vanity, deceit, jealousy, and arrogance. True putrefaction, according to Kassapa, spans both the violent actions we commit in the real world and the toxic attitudes we harbor in our heads.
You know, what makes this ancient text feel incredibly modern is that it doesn't just stop at extreme physical violence. Kassapa specifically calls out everyday social and business corruption, lying, cheating, fraud, people who evade their debts, informants, con artists, folks who betray their friends. Kassapa is pointing out that being a ruthless, pitiless business person who crushes others for personal gain makes you entirely impure. And it doesn't matter how strict your organic foraged diet might be. If you're cheating people, you are corrupt.
And, once again, right after listing out all these societal cheats and everyday deceivers, Kassapa brings it right back to his core thesis. This is putrefaction, not eating meat. You can really hear the momentum building in the text here. He is relentlessly driving home the message that immoral behavior, how we actually act, is the real stench of a human being.
And this brilliantly illustrates Section 3, the illusion of ritual, why optics don't matter.
So, if a strict diet doesn't automatically make you a good person, what about all the other intense religious rituals people do to look holy? Well, Kassapa systematically rejects the most extreme physical optics of his day. Fasting or severe dietary restrictions, rejected. Nudity,
Going bald, wearing dreadlocks, or purposefully rolling around in the dirt to look detached, rejected. Serving the sacred flame or chanting seasonal hymns, completely rejected. The text is highlighting just how utterly useless these optical life hacks are if the person doing them is morally bankrupt in private. You simply cannot put a spiritual costume over a cruel heart.
Kassapa finalizes this whole point with a stark, definitive conclusion. None of those rituals, he says, will not cleanse a mortal not free of doubt. Think about that. If you are full of greed, hostility, and confusion, there is literally no amount of fasting or chanting that's going to wash that away. The external water simply doesn't reach the internal stain.
Which brings us to Section 4, the path forward, true purity. Okay, so if strict diets and intense rituals don't work, what actually does? What's the fix here? Well, here is Kassapa's alternative for true purity. And fair warning, it requires immense internal discipline. It starts with guarding the streams of sense impressions and wandering with conquered faculties. Basically, mastering your reactions to the world around you. But it's not just some cold, stoic detachment. The text says true purity involves delighting in sincerity and tenderness toward others. And finally, and this is a big one, you have to give up clinging to the seen and heard. You have to stop being attached to external validation and the optics of how you look to everyone else.
Let's move to Section 5 and see how this builds. The resolution, the Brahman's awakening.
So Kassapa has just delivered a profound intellectual defeat. I mean, he has completely flipped the Brahman's worldview upside down. So how does the Brahman react to having his lifelong traditions totally dismantled? Actually, his reaction is deeply moving. He doesn't get defensive. Instead, we see a complete transformation. First, the text says he heard the fine words. He truly listened. Second, he was humbled. All that arrogance just vanished. Third, he bowed down to the realized one. And finally, he immediately begged to go forth and follow Kassapa's path. He completely abandoned his lifelong reliance on physical optics in favor of actual moral substance.
Which brings us to our final thought. The Āmagandha Sutta is an ancient text, for sure, but its challenge is incredibly modern. We live in a world that is obsessed with optics, right? Having the right routines, the right aesthetics, the right external signals of virtue. But as this text so powerfully argues, absolutely none of that matters if the core is corrupt. So I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. Are you spending your energy guarding your diet and your external optics? Or are you doing the real work of guarding your character? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this bit of ancient wisdom gives you something great to reflect on today.